Hey everybody, Jimmy Smith back with some MMA news. Finally, some MMA news worth talking about. It's been a really slow couple of months in MMA. A lot of fight night cards, not a lot of big fights, not a lot of big MMA news at the moment. But now there is Sugar Sean O'Malley getting a chance to reclaim his title against Merab Dvalishvili. And that is right now scheduled for June 7th at UFC 316, which is going to be in Jersey. Obviously, there's the Julianna Peña, Kayla Harrison fight. I'll get into that in a second. Those two fights announced for June. It's clear what the UFC is doing, which is trying to fix what I've talked about previously, which is kind of their star problem, where they have a whole host of champions from Eastern Europe, and they need to somehow break that up a bit to make themselves a little more marketable. Some people said in the comment section, when I was talking about the UFC's, star problem, I call it, well, just because they're not big in the U.S. doesn't mean they're not big all over the world. Guys, you make money in the U.S. That's where you sell advertising. That's where people buy the most pay-per-views, is the United States. So being big all over the world is great. You want to be big here. There are a couple markets that make money. Japan, U.S., Australia, U.K., basically. But here's where the most people live who are going to buy pay-per-views, is the United States. So having an entire roster of Eastern European champions doesn't help you to that end. They got to be big here. And what they're trying to do is break that up a bit and get Sugar Sean O'Malley, who has that star quality, whether you like him or not as a fighter. He certainly has that star power. They want to give him another shot. But please, I'm going to list this out. And let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong about any of this stuff. It'll be 10 months by the time June rolls around since he has fought. His last fight was against this guy, Merab Dvalishvili, who's the current 135-pound champion, in a fight that wasn't particularly close. We haven't seen Sugar Sean take on anyone, let alone defeat somebody like Merab Dvalishvili. That makes me think, okay, he's made some adjustments. Maybe he'd win this a second time. He hasn't fought at all. Getting over an injury, which I don't think is going to be a huge factor by the time June rolls around, but it does speak a little bit to the inactivity of, once again, what will be 10 months by the time he actually steps in the octagon. This makes, from a competitive standpoint, very little sense. This is a guy who already beat you last time in a fight that wasn't particularly close, and now you're going to take him on again after 10 months off. You haven't beaten anyone like this. I don't know why you would at all bet that you won't see the exact same outcome against Sugar Sean. Also, Sugar Sean isn't the kind of guy where he has this, a really broad skill set. He can do a lot of different things, and he didn't find the right combination last time, but he'll mix things up and do things differently. He can knock you out with his boxing. His submission game is good, not great. That's about it. Meaning he can stop a takedown and keep it on the feet, but he's not a guy who can beat you a lot of different ways. So the idea that he mixes and matches his skill set in order to come up with the right combination, the way like GSP did in rematches, right? I don't see that happening. So if he doesn't knock Merab out, Merab comes forward and gets clipped, how's he going to beat him? I don't see it. Certainly not going to out-wrestle him. Probably not going to catch him unless Merab is really dumb and dives right into a guillotine, which he's not going to do. Can't outpace the guy. I don't see necessarily him having the tools to be better in a second fight. But when you look at the rankings right now, which I just brought up, Merab is your champion. Number one contender is still Sugar Sean O'Malley, despite, once again, the 10-month layoff by the time they actually fight. Number 2 is Petr Yan. Number 3 is Umar Nurmagomedov, whom Merab just beat. Number 4 is Corey Sandhagen, who's not, is going to take at least one win to get back in title contention. Davison Figueiredo, Song Yadong at number 6, Marlon Vera at number 7. Yeah, there aren't a ton of options right now that are appealing for the UFC. I get why they're doing it. Also, another loss to Merab Dvalishvili, a guy who just stylistically is a nightmare for a guy like Sugar Sean O'Malley. Does it destroy his career? No. So the idea, okay, he loses, assuming, of course, it looks kind of like the last fight. So what? He loses. He's still a contender. Let's argue that he wins another couple fights. He can get a shot again. Right? So I get why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe we have a star win, and if he loses, it's not the end of the world. He's losing to a dominant champion. Also, the idea that Sugar Sean only had one title defense, and that was against Marlon Vera before losing to Merab Dvalishvili. This isn't like a Jose Aldo, an Anderson Silva, where, okay, he lost, but he's a legend. Get him back in there for a rematch. He had one title defense. So it only makes sense from an economic standpoint to get a champ that the UFC can really get behind at 135 pounds, rather than another Eastern European guy, Umar Nurmagomedov, for example, that was a very close fight. But you're going to have a repeat of the same kind of problem. The only bright spot really is Merab does tend to play with his food a little bit. We saw, first off in the Sugar Sean fight, also in the last fight against Umar, where we took him down and he would pop right back up again. And he does tend to kind of showboat a little bit. He does tend to get kind of cocky. Could walk into a shot. Sugar Sean does have real knockout power. So that's the only thing I would kind of be training Sugar Sean for is, hey, if you get the opportunity, if he stands in front of you and starts mugging, land the big shot and getting used to taking those little opportunities, because Merab will give them to you occasionally. So I see why the UFC is doing it. How fans respond to it, whether or not they pay pay-per-view prices for it, that's another question altogether. The other fight announced for the same card, Kayla Harrison versus Julianna Peña. No surprise there. This is the only fight that makes any sense at 135 pounds. Kayla Harrison, 34 years old, 18-1, destroyed Holly Holm in her UFC debut, and then beat Ketlen Vieira by decision her last time out. So real solid. I want to tell a quick story. If any of you have met a tremendous physical specimen in real life, and I met Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in an airport in Philadelphia one time, my favorite basketball player of all time. If you've met a lineman in football and you go, holy God, I can't believe you exist in real life. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 7'2". I was like, I cannot believe you exist in real life. Cris Cyborg is one of the few MMA athletes that I met that I went, holy God, you are like a video game character in real life. She's all muscle. She's gigantic. Well, when I met Kayla Harrison, I had interviewed her several times for my SiriusXM show, stuff like that, but I never met her in real life. I went to a Bellator. They had put her cage side, so I met her, gave her a hug, and I went, holy God, she's just rock solid. Built in a very different way than Cyborg. She's not as tall, she's not as lean, but she's just rocked out solid. And I hugged her, and I was like, man, she's the first female athlete I've ever met that I was like, she could physically compete with Cyborg. I'm not saying she wins that fight, by the way. I'm just saying, wow. She was the first one that I hugged, and I was like, she just feels like a bag of boulders. Unbelievably strong. So, two-time Olympic gold medalist in judo. She's fantastic with her takedowns, her top control, all this stuff. The difficulty I see, and obviously I'll break these fights down as it gets closer, and I'm actually doing a pre-fight breakdown of it. The one advantage Julianna Peña has is she's really durable. And when she's lost, she's tended to lose. She has lost by submission. That's how Valentina Shevchenko finished her. Who was it? Sarah McMahon who beat her by rear naked choke. No. She beat Sarah McMahon by rear naked choke. It was Jermaine Durandamy who beat her by guillotine. So when she's lost, Valentina Shevchenko beat her by armbar. She does tend to lose by submission when she loses, but the one thing about Kayla Harrison is her submission game is judo-based, so real solid on top. Her transitions are pretty good. She doesn't have a world-class ground game to where she's going to catch really top fighters who have really good defense at anything but like a rear naked or the real basic stuff. So if Julianna Peña can stay out of those submissions and make it kind of a war of attrition, the problem is the one time Kayla Harrison had to go five rounds against Larissa Pacheco, and she lost by decision, the only loss of her career. She did slow down late in that fight. The problem with her build, which is all muscle, she's super explosive. Judo's a very explosive style. You can run out of gas. It's hard to keep that explosive kind of style going for 5-minute rounds. It's a long time. So Kayla is used to blowing people out of the water or just winning 3-rounders. She's only been, as I said, in one 5-round fight. It's not the UFC has put her in a lot of fight night main events where she gets some 5-round experience or anything like that. She just hasn't been in those situations. So if you're Julianna Peña, the strategy is going to be winning it in rounds 4 and 5. Drag her into the deep water and see what this incredibly talented physical athlete can do late in a fight. As far as the physical tools and the tactical tools and all this stuff, I think, Kayla Harrison's better all around. Pena might be the better kickboxer, but it's just hard to stay in kickboxing range against somebody with the strength and the takedown ability of Kayla Harrison. But can Kayla keep the pressure on the whole time? That's going to be kind of the line of this fight. Is she deserving? Yes. Remember, it came from PFL, where she had an incredible run there, so she came in with some juice. She does have the, whatever you call the amateur pedigree, meaning 2-time Olympic gold medalist in judo. She has, and she beat Holly Holm, blew her out of the water. Holly Holm is one of those that I didn't have in her UFC career, I didn't have a ton of faith in her. And what I mean by that is I called her the Buster Douglas of MMA. She looked great one time. She was in it in a bunch of other fights, but she could never quite get over the hump against other really talented fighters. Every time she would face that next level fighter, she would lose. It would be close sometimes, but she would lose. Kayla made her look bad, which is hard to do. Amanda Nunes is the only fighter to really make Holly Holm look bad. And Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison made her look bad. And that's not easy to do because Holly Holm's just big, strong, physical, and well-rounded. So she deserves this title opportunity. Julianna Peña, I didn't think beat Raquel Pennington. I scored it for Raquel Pennington. But it's this idea. A lot of people go, okay, I don't know if you're going to be great at 135 pounds. So this is a big test for the champ. But another thing, Kayla Harrison is in her mid-30s. The drop-off tends to be pretty steep. They both are, actually. But for Kayla Harrison as kind of the next generation at 135, well, it's hard to be the next generation when you're 34 years old, you've had 19 professional fights. That's a long career. So we'll see what happens with this fight. As I said, I'll break it down as it gets a little closer. Just my preliminary thoughts on these people and the opportunities they've been presented with. But give me a like, give me a subscribe, give me a comment. Let me know what you think. Talk to you later.